And number 37. 37 stress fractures. In one foot. One person. One basketball career. Not over a lifetime. Not accumulated over decades of normal wear. 37 fractures in the left foot of a man who was, in 1977, widely considered the best basketball player on earth. Who had just won the NBA championship and Finals MVP. Who was 24 years old and should have had a decade of dominance ahead of him. His name is Bill Walton, and his feet were destroyed, not by accident, not by misfortune, not by the random cruelty that injury sometimes inflicts. They were destroyed by a man who was supposed to be protecting them, a team physician who injected pain-blocking drugs into Walton's foot repeatedly, without fully disclosing the long-term consequences, to keep him available to play basketball games. The Portland Trail Blazers needed him on the court. The doctor obliged, and Bill Walton paid for it for the rest of his life. But here's why this story matters beyond one man's feat. What happened to Bill Walton forced the entire professional sports world to answer a question it had been avoiding for decades. Whose body is it, really? The players? Or the team's? The relationship between a team physician and a professional athlete carries a conflict of interest that we rarely name directly, but that everyone inside professional sports understands implicitly. The team pays the doctor. The doctor works for the team. The player is both the team's most valuable asset and the doctor's patient. When those two roles align, when what's best for the player is also what's best for the team, there's no conflict. When they diverge, when keeping the player healthy requires keeping them off the court, the conflict becomes something that the entire history of professional sports medicine has struggled to resolve. Bill Walton's case is the most documented, most consequential, and most legally significant example of what happens when that conflict resolves itself in the wrong direction. It changed NBA policy. It changed how team doctors are governed. It contributed to the foundational principle, now standard across professional sports, that a team physician's primary medical obligation runs to the player, not the franchise. That principle exists today because of what was done to Bill Walton's feet. And he walked with pain for 30 years to establish it. November 5, 1952. La Mesa, California. Bill Walton grows up in a household without much money, but with an enormous amount of music. His parents are devoted fans of the Grateful Dead, a folk, of the kind of sound that accompanies a certain California idealism. He discovers the game late, relative to most future NBA players. At 11, 12, he's gawky and enormous and unsure of himself. But something happens in high school at Helix Charter in La Mesa. The body and the game find each other. By his senior year, he's 6'11", weighing 210 pounds, and moving with a fluency that large men aren't supposed to possess. He's also stuttering severely, a speech impediment that will follow him for decades and that, in interviews he's given throughout his life, he cites as the invisible weight beneath all the visible talent. UCLA. Coach John Wooden. The most successful program in the history of college basketball. Walton arrives in 1970 and the Bruins win the national championship. In each of his 3 varsity seasons, he's named Player of the Year twice. He averages 20.3 points and 15.7 rebounds per game in college. In 1974, Sports Illustrated calls him the most complete player in the country. The Portland Trail Blazers select him first overall in 1974. The city receives him with the specific hope of a franchise that has been bad for years. The 1976-77 season is the peak. Coach Jack Ramsey's team goes 49-33 in the regular season and then, in the playoffs, becomes something extraordinary. A unit of almost telepathic coherence, where Walton's passing out of the post, his shot blocking, his ability to control both tempo and space simultaneously, makes every player around him better. June 5, 1977. Portland wins the NBA championship over the Philadelphia 76ers in 6 games. Bill Walton is named Finals MVP. He is 24 years old. He has, by consensus, just announced himself as the best basketball player alive. His foot had been bothering him for months. He'd been playing through pain. He'd been receiving treatment that he'd been told was routine. He didn't fully understand what was being done to him. And the season was over now. He could rest. The foot would heal. The foot would not heal. It would never fully heal again. 1977-78 season. Portland is defending champions. Bill Walton is the centerpiece of everything. His left foot continues to deteriorate. The pain is persistent, specific, the kind that locates itself in the bones rather than the muscles. He reports it to the team's medical staff. What happens next is this: the team physician administers cortisone injections and pain-blocking agents to Walton's foot repeatedly over the course of the season. The treatment allows him to play through the pain. It does not address the underlying structural damage. In some cases, according to medical testimony, it may have masked symptoms that, if properly identified and rested, could have allowed the fractures to heal. Walton plays 58 games in the 1977-78 season. He misses 24 games. The foot continues to deteriorate. He's receiving injections before games to stay on the floor. Here's the moment that cannot be undone. Not a single game or a single play, but a series of choices made in a training room by a physician who worked for the franchise. Under the implicit and sometimes explicit pressure of an organization that needed its best player available for playoff basketball. Did Robert Cook, the Blazers team physician at the time, intend to harm Walton? Almost certainly not. Did the pressure of the organization influence his medical decisions? The court documents suggest it did. Did Walton fully understand what was being injected into his foot and what the long-term implications might be? His lawsuit later claimed he was not given adequate informed consent. The 1978-79 season. Walton plays 65 games. Then he suffers a stress fracture severe enough that surgery is required. He misses the rest of the season. Portland declined significantly without him. He requests a trade, citing concerns about how his medical care had been handled. The San Diego Clippers acquire him in 1979. He plays 14 games. His foot gives out again. He plays 33 games in 1980-81. His foot gives out again. He spends the next 4 years attempting to come back, surgeries, rehabilitation, bone grafts. He later counts the damage, 37 stress fractures in his left foot alone, over the course of his career. The structural integrity of the foot had been compromised in ways that the human body cannot fully reverse. He was supposed to be one of the best centers in the history of the sport. For 4 years, he was. And then he was a man who couldn't walk across a parking lot without pain. 1986. Bill Walton files a lawsuit against the Portland Trail Blazers and against Dr. Robert Cook. The case settles out of court. Neither party admits wrongdoing. This is what most of these settlements look like: a quiet resolution that protects institutions. But the case itself changed things. Sports journalists and medical ethicists began asking questions. The NBA and other leagues began codifying the principle that team physicians carry an ethical obligation to their patients. There is a concept in medical ethics called dual loyalty. The conflict that rises when a physician's obligations to a patient and an employer point in different directions. The Walton case is a watershed moment. But here's what the policy changes can and do: Bill Walton's feet. And what those feet cost him in human terms. He was one of the 2 or 3 best centers in the history of the sport. And then, 14 years of rehabilitation, surgeries, attempts, setbacks. But here's the thing: he came back. In 1985-86, with the Boston Celtics, he won a second NBA championship. He won 6th Man of the Year. For 1 year, the body cooperated. Larry Bird called him the greatest teammate I ever had. That year is both the most hopeful thing in this story and the saddest, because it shows what the whole career could have been. He retired in 1988. He was 35. He walked in pain for years afterward. And he did something with all of it that nobody expected. He became one of the most joyful human beings in the basketball world. His television commentary became beloved. The contradiction at the center of Bill Walton is this: a man who was given every reason to become bitter and chose not to. That choice is its own kind of championship. These stories matter. The American College of Sports Medicine updated guidelines. The NBA Players Association negotiated for second opinions. The direction of the legal framework bends toward the player. It bends that way because Bill Walton's feet documented what happens when it doesn't. If Walton had stayed healthy, if his team doctor had prioritized the long-term function of his patient's foot, what does the basketball world look like? A healthy Bill Walton is a legitimate argument for the greatest center in NBA history. Portland might be a dynasty instead of a footnote. Instead, 37 fractures. A lawsuit. A quiet settlement. Bill Walton was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1993. He died on May 27, 2024. The eulogies mention everything but his feet. Almost none of them mention the thing that changed medicine, the invisible part of the story. But it mattered. The hardest part of telling this story is this: Bill Walton never wanted it told as a tragedy. He turned his pain into a broadcast career. But his grace doesn't absolve the institution. The medicine changed. Something real came out of the damage. I'm not sure that's comfort. But it's not nothing. If you want more stories about what the sport costs to people who make it, subscribe. Next week on Hoop Tales, the man whose fingerprints are on every championship but whose name is never said.